This is Class 17 High-End Audio as part of the 4440 Critical Listening. In this lecture, in this PowerPoint, we're going to talk about the need and the necessity for high-end audio and how we can incorporate a high-end audio system into what maybe we already currently have, or how to design one, just from scratch. Maybe our only critical or high-end listening environments right now are earbuds, which I would not really say is high-end and not particularly critical. So why do we need the highest fidelity? Why do we need a high-end audio system? Well, I think it begins with the idea of passion. High-end audio is the quest to recreate at the highest fidelity possible these fantastic performances, whether they're live or in the studio. We need a system that is going to reproduce something that we know and call and love music. So the music and the quality of the reproduction matter deeply in the high-end ethos. Thus, the need for high-end audio products is extremely important. Here's a performance by the boss, Bruce Springsteen. And think about all the dynamics and all the instrumentation that go into his performance. Are those really getting recreated on a pair of earbuds? But a big misconception is that high-end audio often means high-priced. But rather, high-end refers to products, performance, that communicate the musical experience so that they take that performance by the boss and they are able to bring that into, well, in this case, somebody's living room or to wherever your listening environment is or are. It should expose the original performance and not add layers or filters that mask the original recording. There are a lot of systems out there, from earbuds to multi-speaker systems. And truly, the good high-end systems are the ones that don't color or change or alter the original intent of the engineer, producers, artists, and musicians involved. I often think of good high-end audio system as this picture. Well, what is it? It kind of looks like maybe something if you went to Home Depot, like a color swash or whatever they call it. This is the color I want to paint my wall. Well, if we take a closer look, we realize it's actually a picture of the Grand Canyon. And here's the thing. A bad audio system is very easy to tell that it's bad because it takes this and turns it into that. But I think there's a lot of other systems out there that are a little bit more subtle. We can still tell it's the Grand Canyon. We sort of see the outline, but we're not getting all the definition and that original intent. Or in here, the actual Grand Canyon and its architecture and structure. So when we talk about getting a good high-end system, I think the last note here on this page is when the playback system is forgotten. So we forget that we're looking at a picture of the Grand Canyon and rather we're experiencing the Grand Canyon. So more than specs, really a high-end audio system is based on sound, okay? And how it makes playback transparent. So any good high-end audio system is made up of three main components. The first one being a source component. Many of you have probably the bottom left-hand side source component there, which is not some program called Grab. It's actually a version of Pro Tools. It looks like Pro Tools maybe 8, maybe even 7. Or maybe you have some other type of DAW. But there are many other sources. Here's a CD player, in fact. I have that as part of one of my source components in my quote-unquote high-end audio system. But a turntable could be part of that, a cassette player. There are many other devices that could be used. Usually after this source component, you have some type of control component. And I think for probably 90% of us, at least students that I have in this class, it's not some type of high-end preamp or some type of high-end mixer. It's in fact a hardware interface. Sometimes these hardware interfaces are very nice and they do a great job of converting the digital information that's going on in the computer to translating them to the playback components. And sometimes they're the cheapest ones that they could find. Sometimes they were a gift from mom and dad. But the control component is really the heart of the system. It's taking what's on the medium, whether that be or the control component, and it's in a big part amplifying and translating that source component into the electrical and then ultimate sound wave or sound waves. And that's sort of what the playback components are about. In some systems, as you can see here with the Tannoy, there's actually a power amplifier built into the speakers, but there are also many other playback components that are passive and really rely upon the control component to not only route the signal from the source component, but also provide some amplification. So, choosing a high-end audio system. Well, first of all, you should think about your needs. What best suits your needs? What will you be using your high-end audio system for? And where will it be used? This picture of a room here, it looks like any type of living room, maybe it's in an office somewhere, looks very basic. It looks maybe like a home environment. But if that's where the critical listening is going to take place, then sort of the components and things that one would need for this system should be based on where it'll be listened to. You also have to think too, what type of listening environment or critical high-end audio system do I need if I'm, say, producing albums like the Ramones put out versus, say, a Steely Dan record. So it still always comes down to money, right? When choosing your high-end audio system, it's fair to say that economics plays a big part of that. So, how do you budget? How do you figure out, how much to spend on your system? Well, you have to ask yourself, where do your priorities lie? The Harley book does a great job of talking about, the financial sort of issues that come up, or rather how to budget yourself, being somebody who's more than just an audio enthusiast, somebody who's looking to have a career in the industry, whether it be audio, media, or installation, all the great avenues that you can take. So he talks about the 10% to 15% of annual income. Now, obviously, this is going to be different for me as a professor and different for you as a student. So instead, take what your annual income is and multiply it by 0.1 or 0.15 for a total of 15%. And that is how much, or much as it says here, you should spend on music or on your high-end audio system. If your annual income is zero, well, then the math is very, very easy. But I'm sure, and perhaps that means then you need to not have an income of zero in order that you can start acquiring some of the tools that you're going to need. Obviously, it would be great if we could all just go out and buy this huge, great, $5,000 system that had all the great speakers, had all the great control components of a CD player and a DAW, and a nice preamplifier to passive speakers, and the speakers, could basically pick up sounds, at 1 hertz and reproduce them accurately. The reality of it is often, you can buy an entire system made up of the finest components, buy an entire system made up of components with a limited budget, buy just a few components now, and add to the system as finances permit. And this really tends to be, I think, the most productive way to go about your system. Don't buy a lot of bad things. Maybe just, if you're really short financially on money, buy one good thing and keep adding to that, knowing that really, if you spend a lot of money on a bunch of stuff that's mediocre, you're really not headed anywhere. You know, and Hartley does a good job of kind of telling us where we should budget, or how that budget allocation should go, and what we should be spending the most on. And first, so really, I think he talks about the importance of loudspeakers, and what you're listening through really is very important. Over the preamplifier, any power amplifier, and then the digital source and interconnections and cables. So really, he's saying if you're going to go out and buy one thing, loudspeakers should probably be the first, and probably should be the most expensive component of your system. Now, mileage may vary, but I think this gives us sort of a good guideline as to what's really important in our setups. And like we said, many audiophiles gradually build their hi-fi system one great component at a time. Well, how do we know what's good and what's bad? Well, that's an excellent question. So one great place to find this information is by reading magazine reviews. However, be careful. Look for magazines that are not consumer driven, or are consumer driven and not market driven. Magazines that have bad reviews as well as good reviews. And associate the review with the reviewer. Get to know who these reviewers are and what type of equipment they deal with on a day-to-day basis. And say, hey, well, they said this about this piece of equipment, and I like the results that they get in their work, so maybe I should be using this equipment too. And remember, you need to sort of system match. So based on your needs, the how, where, and what you'll be listening to, you should choose components that sums will get you the desired results. Okay? How can we learn this? Well, a great way that I have since 2003, kind of amassing all my high-end audio systems, is to go to one of these showrooms. Something like Guitar Center, or there's many other places, and go to their pro audio section and test this gear out. Bring in your reference mix, bring in an album you really know, and try it out. If you're starting with speakers, the best way to tell a variety of different speakers is to go to one of these places that have them all set up there off all the same source component, and they can probably even tell you what the main heart component is as well. From this, you should be able to get a pretty good idea. Then I'd recommend you go and buy it on eBay, or find some third party that will get you a much better deal than some of those places. But also there's a lot of other local mom and pop type places too that you can kind of get in touch with. I know Vintage Audio King is one here in Nashville, and that can be a great resource. They definitely provide you with the opportunity to listen before you buy. And they also have a lot of great advice and a lot of cutting edge gear. So don't base decisions solely on brand names or reviews or specs. Consider a company's longevity. Okay. Other considerations is that you might want to have a relationship with the retailer after you buy it. I know one of the great things about Sweetwater is they offer free tech support after you buy equipment from them. And remember, used equipment is not always bad. And places like Sweetwater too, they sometimes will offer free product upgrades if you've bought them within a certain time. So there's a lot of things to consider when buying a high-end audio system, and in class we'll be able to talk about this more and answer any questions, but I think this is a good place to start.